You know what ticks me off? Public EV charging stations that charge by the minute or even by the second instead of by the kilowatt hour or unit of energy. Let's talk about it on the ride up. Find one, plug in, and see what it means for you and your charging costs. Why do I have a strange feeling they're going to lock off the charging stations in time for this festival? You can do it every year, always complain about it, and they never do anything about it. Okay, now that I'm out of town and away from all the idiots on their cell phones, let's talk about EV charging stations and how they charge for charging. So in an ideal world, they would just charge by the unit of energy, which is the kilowatt hour. It's what you pay for on your electricity bill at home. And in my opinion, it should be the same way for EV charging out in public. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than at home because they have to put in the infrastructure. So they have to recover those costs, and maybe they want to make a profit. Some of them are going to keep it free, which is obviously ideal for us drivers, but it's also not sustainable in the long run unless you have a business model that brings in EV drivers to spend money in other ways. So they're going to have to charge money somehow. So I see a lot of charging stations that charge either by the minute or even by like the 30-second increment. And that's one of the stations we're going to head to today in Ludington, Michigan. It's a Blink branded station at Ludington Bay Brewing. It's an absolutely fantastic location. Not that I want to drink and drive, but you can get a meal. I'm actually going to go to a coffee shop that's right down the road because the brewery is not going to be open when I get there. But they charge 3 cents for the 30-second increment. At least that's what I saw on PlugShare. So essentially 6 cents per minute. Now, I did a segment before on DC fast charging and how also charging by the minute is not really equitable because different vehicles charge at different rates and you have the charging curve. So as the vehicle goes towards 100%, it's going to start to slow down. So again, you're kind of starting to get ripped off towards the end of the charging period. It's not clear how much you're actually paying until you get the final receipt where you see how many dollars you paid for how many kilowatt hours. You divide that, you see how many cents per kilowatt hour you're paying. Obviously, if you're paying by the kilowatt hour, for example, Electrify America charges you 36 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's what you're going to pay, whether your car charges at 350 kilowatts or at 50 kilowatts. It doesn't matter. So the equivalent is if you go to a gas station and instead of charging you by the gallon, they say, well, we're going to charge you this many cents per minute. But let's say your car has one of those filling nozzles that has a little curve in it. And so when you put the nozzle in, it kicks back all the time. So you put in your credit card, you start fueling, and you really crank down on the nozzle, and then it kicks back and it stops. But you're still paying. Okay, so you gingerly do it again, and you try to ramp up to some maximum, and it's okay for a while, and then it kicks back again. So it stops. So again, not delivering fuel, but you're still paying by the second. Until you finally slow down, you find a place on the nozzle where it just barely delivers and doesn't kick back. And then also, once the tank gets full, it starts to kick back a little bit because fuel is up in the nozzle. So overall, you're not really paying by the gallon, you're paying by time, and it's really dependent on how quickly you can deliver that fuel. And that's exactly what's happening when you're paying by the minute for EV charging. Now, we talked about DC fast charging, and for level 2 charging, some of you are thinking, well, but the charging rate doesn't change. So once you have it established, that's what you're paying. Well, the answer is yes and no. So first of all, you have to figure out which is charging at the higher rate, the MPSC or the charging station or your vehicle, because your vehicle's onboard charger has a certain limitation and the MPSC has a certain limitation. If you're maxing it out and you maintain that rate for the full time, sure, then it's easy. You can figure it out as easy. So let's take the example of the place I'm going. So that Blink station claims to deliver 17.7 kilowatts, which by the way is a weird number. Normally it's in increments of 10, 20, 40, 50 amps, whatever.
these days, 80 amps. So I would expect 19.2, but for whatever reason, Link put 17.7. Okay, fine. So my motorcycle can take 12 kilowatts. So that's going to be the charging rate, at least at the beginning. Now, in this case, my motorcycle, the charging rate also turns down towards the end of the charging cycle. So I'm not going to be getting the full 12 kilowatts towards the end. I'm going to be getting 10, it's going to start to ramp down towards the end if I stay that long. So if you have an F-150 Lightning that charges at 19.2 kilowatts on level 2, then the limiting factor is going to be the station. So 6 cents a minute is $3.60 per hour. If you're getting the full 80 amps, which by the way you're not, then you're paying $3.60 for 17.7 kilowatt hours. So we'll do the math and I'll put it up on the screen. So that's your absolute best deal that you're going to get if your vehicle charging rate outpaces what the EVSE can deliver. But as soon as your charging rate goes down, Chevy Bolt EV is going to have 7 point something kilowatts. Maybe the newer ones are a little higher. My daughter's 2015 Chevy Volt with a V charges at 3.6 kilowatts, which means she's going to get $3.60 for 3.6 kilowatts. That's $1 a kilowatt hour. I've always thought that Country Dairy would be a great place for a level 2 charging station. I actually approached them on it. There's a little country store inside there that has food, ice cream, a bathroom. And what a fantastic place. And even it's right off the bike trail. So what are some reasons why an EV charging host would charge by the minute? First and foremost, they may not know that they are permitted to charge by the kilowatt hour. For many utilities, it is illegal to resell their energy. Now in Michigan, that's not the case, or at least I can speak for Consumers Energy. There's a rate case ruling that says when energy is resold as a motor fuel, it can be resold by the kilowatt hour. So right off the bat, if the EV charging host is in Consumers Energy territory, they can charge by the kilowatt hour. I did check with DTE and they said the same thing. And I would imagine that it's the same case anywhere in Michigan because we are regulated utilities under the Michigan Public Service Commission. So first of all, it just could be ignorance that the charging host says, well, I'm not allowed to charge by the kilowatt hour, which is wrong. So if you're doing it for that reason, just please change it. Another reason might be that whether there's a Chevy Volt charging at 3.6 kilowatts or a Ford F-150 Lightning charging at 19.2 kilowatts, that vehicle is still taking up the space that could be being used by another vehicle that charges at a higher rate. So they're essentially losing out on revenue. A slower charging vehicle is charging there. The flip side of that is somebody who has a Chevy Volt has that low charging rate may say, you know what, it's not worth my while. I'm just going to buy gas. I'm not going to get the electricity here. It's cheaper for me to drive on gas. So they would actually be losing out on that business. The other reason is that if you charge by the minute, even when the vehicle is done charging, you're still collecting revenue. So what you're effectively doing is implementing an idle fee. So the way that works is when the vehicle is done charging to the level the owner set, whether it's 80, 90, 100%, it stops charging and it stops drawing electricity from that charging station. If you're charging by the kilowatt hour, obviously your income rate also goes to zero, and then the car is just sitting there. And again, that's lost revenue compared to somebody who moves and then a new vehicle comes in there. So if you charge by the minute, you're essentially telling that person, whether you're drawing electricity or not, I'm still going to charge you. So I guess that's a good thing, but there's another way to handle that. Most public charging station providers have something called an idle fee. And the way that works is pretty similarly, except you charge by the kilowatt hour, you charge by the unit of energy. Once the car is done charging, you give a grace period if you want, 10, 20, 30 minutes saying, okay, I get it. You're in a restaurant somewhere, you got to come out. But then after that time period, then they're going to start charging you by the minute. That encourages you then to move. Tesla does that with their superchargers when they're more than 50% full. The idea, of course, is that you don't want somebody that's in a hotel that's nearby that's plugged into the supercharger. They were done charging in 30 minutes and then they're plugged in all night, thereby blocking the station, keeping others from using it. So using the per minute charge as an idle fee equivalent is kind of a poor implementation. Welcome to Ludington. You can see the Spartan over there, which is the spare parts ship for the Badger. And there's Ludington Bay. And the chargers are behind the building. Looks like they are open. I think they open at 11:30. And the chargers are right here. Oh, good thing I have a reverse gear. That's uphill. I have both my smartphone app and my RFID card. So I made a little video about why to have RFID cards in addition to your smartphone app. And one of the reasons is it's super easy. I have the dual J plug, but I only need the one. I hear the beep. Enter your unit number. 939. Enter. Charge confirmation, 16.6 kilowatts. To charge now. So here it is, 3 cents per 30 seconds, occupancy rate, 0 for 1 hour. I saw the charging light come on. The power is spooling up, 8.5 kilowatts. So that's part of what I'm talking about. This unit is capable of 16 is what it said. And I'm getting 8.5. But that's because of my bike, because it's already at 57%. And now it says 52 minutes. Well, that's enough for me to get my coffee. So back at the motorcycle, 107%. So I send it for the extended range. That gives you an extra 10%. So it's still charging at 4.3 kilowatts. I don't have the app pulled up right now, and there's not much information on the screen here. Anyway, this is good enough. I'm not going to wait till the 6 minutes for 110%. So we'll hang this back up. Do some cord management. Oh, here we go. Quantity, 1 hour, 2 minutes, 27 seconds, 375. When I pull up the app later, I'll get the kilowatt hours, and then we'll calculate the rate. So overall, can't complain. A little less than $4. Had a coffee and a bagel. Got some emails done. That's the kind of stop I like. And now we basically have full range, another 100 plus miles of range. So I could go up to Manistee and up M22, which I'm not going to do. This is just a day trip. Thinking about what I paid to charge 7 kilowatt hours approximately. So it was actually more than 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Now keep in mind at home I'm paying 15 cents all in overnight. So that's more than 3 times the price of charging at home. Now, if I had arrived with a state of charge that was lower, I probably would have charged at a higher rate. So the per kilowatt hour rate would have been a little bit lower. But this is the kind of math you have to do. And that's the whole point, is this shouldn't be that hard to figure out. And, you know, for me, I only need a small charge for the motorcycle. So $3.75 is not a big deal. I mean, I spent more than that for my latte. So, you know, to me, this is part of traveling, and it's also offset partially by some free charges. But if you're charging a really large battery and you're getting that kind of rate, you know, if you're charging a Chevy Bolt EV, and let's say you need 2/3 of the battery, like 40 kilowatt hours at 50 cents, that's 20 bucks. I don't know, that starts to get up there. I mean, for what you're getting, the number of miles you're getting, that's not really that great of a value. So again, I would much prefer to pay by the kilowatt hour, and then I can decide, you know, when I want to cut it off, and I don't have to do any complicated math. But at the end of your charging session, you really just have to divide the dollars that you paid by the kilowatt hours of energy that you got, and that's your effective rate. And then you can decide whether or not that's worth it for you, or whether you need that charge. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is a fair way to charge for public charging by kilowatt hour? Do you agree with idle fees? Should it be free? So let me know your thoughts. Get a conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you next time.